So welcome to Jazz Chat with David Friesen. We have a very special guest with us today. One of the great jazz tenor players. And he will go down in history, in my opinion, as one of the greatest jazz tenor players of all times. He's won a Grammy. He's been mentioned many times on the DownBeat lists of great musicians and composers. I could go on, but I won't, because we don't have that much time to introduce this great musician. Please welcome Joe Lovano. How you doing, Joe?
Hey, David. Thank you, man. Thanks for that generous, beautiful introduction, and for inviting me to participate in your series of interviews, man.
You know, I called you a great tenor player. What makes a great jazz musician?
Well, I mean, I feel I'm just scratching the surface, man, about being expressive and trying to be myself within this amazing legacy of the music, and I think it's all about how serious you are and the passion that that you strive for, and you're fueled by great musicians and great music, beautiful things that have happened in the history. It's always, for me, like looking back and reaching forth, to be inspired and not to try to copy, but to let things channel through your expression, and the more you get into playing with all kinds of different folks in this amazing multi-generational, multicultural world of music that we live in, I think you create a world of music for yourself, and it's inspired by inspired folks from within the history,
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like, what makes a great anything is how serious you are about pursuing the discovery of the art of the art of improvising, as far as a jazz musician.
Yeah, you mentioned it first about how little we know, and I use the analogy when I'm teaching that the sun at the vantage point here in Portland, for instance, where it's going to be 117 today, by the way,
Right.
That's ridiculous, a heat wave. Anyways, it looks like we could take that sun and place it inside Portland, easy. But the closer we get to the sun, the larger it becomes, the smaller we become. And it's that way with music, the source of music. The closer we get to the source of music, we see how vast it is and how small we are, how little we really do know.
Ornette Coleman told me one time, he said, there was music before it was a word, and Ornette was always saying little things. I know because you had relationship with Ornette as well, I'm sure. And everything, he would ponder things and speak some inner truths,
Oh, yeah.
like what you're saying about the sun and the center of it.
Right.
What fuels your ideas, and it's amazing to live in the world of music the way we do. Such a blessing.
You mentioned passion, a calling for playing this music, and in a classroom, I will have everyone. If someone asks me, "Well, what do you mean by passion, or what do you mean by calling?" So I had everyone in the room hold their breath. I says, "I'm going to count to 3. Everyone take a big breath, and then we'll see how long you can hold your breath." And after about 2 or 3 minutes, everyone's gasping, And I asked one person, I said, "Well, why did you breathe?" He says, I had to. I says, well, that's what it's like to be called to play music.
Right. Well, you know, it is all about your breath and how you can speak with this flowing, natural ability that we all have. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
the flow and your heartbeat, and there's all these natural things that are in us that when it comes through in the music in a real relaxed, organic way, that's when there's a lot of magic that happens, and you breathe together with folks. You know,
Right. Right.
uh, you find each other's way of breathing in a way where the music takes shapes, you know, within an ensemble or just when you're playing unaccompanied as well, you know.
Whoever is out there that doesn't agree with Joe, look at yourself. You're breathing.
Right.
That's life, you know.
Yeah. To be relaxed, you know, like people,
Right.
you know, are always saying, you know, or asking that same kind of a question, you know, how do you stay relaxed and focused? And it's all about deep breathing, you know,
Yeah.
and feeling the power of your energy and the center of your whole being from your breath, you know.
And having the confidence to, through practicing, to take our eyes off ourselves so we can listen and respond creatively to what we're hearing.
Yeah, because it's not only the intake of the air, but it's the way you release it, you know.
Right.
And the speed of the air, like for me, you know, trying to develop a sound on my instrument, you know, what does that mean? It's not just the tone that you get when you blow through your horn or whatever,
Right.
you know, it's your approach with rhythm and melody and your development with the harmonic sounds and colors, you know,
Yes.
and it's how you really can play and feel the vibrations and the dynamics
Yes.
from filling your instrument with air, but at different paces. If you want to play really pianissimo, you're moving the same amount of air that you do when you play forte, but you're moving it slower. You know, you really to control that speed of the air is what it's about to play dynamics and phrase. And when you play with strong drummers or whoever, you know, you feel how they are breathing also. You
Oh
know.
yeah. You know, folks out there, put on a Joe Lovano recording right now and listen to what he just said, and you'll hear a perfect balance between what he's talking about and the way he plays. It sounds like you're playing the saxophone when you're talking just now. The same thing, because you know, when you go up to play music, you don't suddenly put on a music mask. You're
Right.
the same individual inside this flesh as you are right now, or anywhere, right?
Right. You know, the thing is, you know, to not play your instrument like it's an exercise, but to really try to be expressive with all the dynamics you have as a human being, you know, in your delivery of whatever you're trying to say.
Right. Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
What? How did you fare through the pandemic? You and Judy, your wife, by the way, is an amazing jazz singer, and you both have that career in music, which is, I think, a blessing. But how did you guys function through this pandemic? What'd you do?
You know what? Judy is such an amazing artist. Also, she's a painter and she's very creative in her life expression, you know, from an early time in her life as a vocalist, but also playing flute growing up and in the modern dance world. She grew up in Philly. So she came to New York and was a part of the Alvin Nicolai Murray Lewis School. And she really, when we met, she was involved in all kinds of things in modern dance and music. And that also is a part of her being, you know. So through this whole pandemic, I mean, we are so fortunate that we could play music together and create create things to happen. We did a lot of live streaming from our place here where we live, and we played at and participated in some fundraising events, you know, as well as we played the Washington, D.C. Jazz Festival, virtual festival. We participated in the Panama Festival where we contributed like a set of music where, you know, we played a suite of improvisations and pieces. And Judy painted a painting while we were improvising together, you know, within the score, like we put a score together, let's say, something to follow. So through the pandemic, we've had a lot of different beautiful moments of creating some music and art together.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that really kept us together because we didn't go anywhere at all.
Right,
You know,
right.
I just drove to Cleveland. Well, we drove to Cleveland. One of my nieces was married June 12th. So we drove out, and Judy hadn't been back to my scene in Cleveland in 2 years, and I hadn't been back since Christmas of 2019, you know. So that was the first time we really left the property and went somewhere, you know, and it was great, you know. But, you know, through this whole period, it's been a lot of soul searching, I think, for everybody. I've been doing a lot of different playing on different horns, bass clarinet and sopranos, the different soprano saxophones that I play on, mezzo, G mezzo, and B flat soprano and a C soprano.
That's what my mother played, was C, actually C melody sax.
C melody, and I've been playing the C melody and exploring more of the woodwind family that I've grown up with, but in a more concentrated way. You know?
Well, that was my next question, was how early did you start and why the tenor?
Well, my dad was one of the leading tenor players around Cleveland when I was growing up.
There you go.
He was born 1925, right? And grew up in that swing and big band, bebop, modern jazz eras, you know, in the free jazz and more open concepts, you know. He heard Bird live, you know, he heard Lester Young. He played in jam sessions with Gene Ammons and folks, you know, in the late 40s when he came home from the service, where he was in the band, you know, he was a staff sergeant in the marching band and the army band. Anyway, I grew up with his record collection and hearing him practicing and trying reeds and getting ready to go to the gig, you know, and it just captured me. It captured me from a very young age.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had horns. You know, my first alto, I guess I really started to realize how to put the reed on and to develop some kind of a tone just on the mouthpiece and neck, you know, 5 and 6 years old, you know. There's a picture of me and my mom when I was like, I don't know, 6 months old. It's in a recording I did called Tenor Legacy that featured Josh Redman also. It was like a father-son kind of an idea with Josh and Dewey and me and my dad, you know. And there's a picture in the booklet where I'm like looking up at my first alto. Turned out to be my first alto, and my mom, you know. And so I don't know, it was something that was just there, and I was captured by my dad's sound and his tone, you know.
Yeah.
And then his record collection and stories about hearing Bird and about Miles and Coltrane. Played at a jam session with Coltrane, early 50s, you know. And then I found like news clippings from the Call Post, which was a newspaper in Cleveland, where my dad's name was in there a lot, playing with Tad Dameron and different gigs, you know, in the late 40s and 50s, you know. And recently I saw these clippings, and there was one clipping from the Majestic Hotel where they talked about the Monday night jam sessions, where everybody that played in Cleveland, it was a place to go, you know, like after hours or, you know, when it was happening. And that in the early 50s. So my dad always talked about playing at a jam session with Coltrane. I found like it must have been that setting.
Oh, wow.
At this Majestic Hotel. That was a famous hotel where Ellington and everyone stayed and played, the ballroom there, you know. So it's like, yeah, so then through the years, you know, into my teenage years, I started playing tenor around 12 or so. I got my first tenor. Prior to that, it was alto and C melody. And going in 7th grade, I got my first tenor. And by the time I was 15, 16 and got my driver's license, I joined the union because I was learning, my lessons were all about learning the saxophone and the theory and repertoire. Everything my dad showed me about playing in the key of A flat or whatever key we were studying, he was teaching me melodies and songs in those keys at the same time. So I learned a lot by ear. And I learned a lot of tunes that I was able to go and sit in with my dad's groups, right? Because I was hearing them play the tunes that he was teaching me. So I was very fortunate to grow up in this incredible environment and have a lot of mentors, drummers, piano players, organ players, guitar players, and other saxophone players, you know, and trumpet. My Uncle Carl, my dad's youngest brother, played trumpet also. And him and my dad were like the two beboppers in the family, right? And they were playing Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie songbook, you know, so that was my introduction to that whole world. But I had two other uncles also that played saxophone. My Uncle Joe was a couple of years older than my dad. He played, and he was a real standards player and a kind of a club date kind of a saxophone player. You know, he didn't lead his own bands and play more adventurous music, but he was a really good musician and had a life in music. My Uncle Nick was 10 years older than my dad, and he played in the Sammy Watkins big band. That was like a territorial band where the male singer was Dean Martin. So when Dean Martin was discovered, my Uncle Nick was in the saxophone section, you know, and he was like a real dance band player and had a beautiful life in music as well as what he did in his business, you know. But I was around a lot of saxophone growing up.
There you go. There,
You know,
why for tenor player? There, my question is answered, and then so that's great, Joe.
you know, but like we were talking earlier about passion. You know, I mean, I just had developed a real love for the music and playing with others and realizing you're playing for people always, you know. And my dad had a career as a leader and had a lot of different organ trio groups, and he was always playing 6 nights a week in supper clubs and jazz venues where it was listening type rooms, you know. Wow. In Cleveland. And
6 nights a week. Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When I was a teenager, he was always, and he was a barber too. He had business, you know.
Of course.
But he was always playing 5 and 6 nights a week. And some clubs, I remember when I was in high school, he'd play one club for 6 months at a time, man. And then
those were the days, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of you know, this is before disco era and different things with DJs and stuff, you know. There were clubs everywhere, man. And not a lot of rooms with nice pianos. So there was a lot of organ. That's the organ kind of came up on the jazz scene in that period. Because
Yeah.
you could just pull up to any corner tavern with your trailer with the organ and set up and turn that corner tavern into a scene
Yeah.
and a jazz club. And that's what Lou Donaldson and a lot of cats did
Yeah.
during that era, you know. And I was really fortunate to be a youngster during that time and feel those vibrations and love, you know.
Yeah. You know, Joe, there's two musicians that you play with. And I've heard your nonet, and I think I was in Orvieto. I heard your nonet when I was there with Denny Zeitlin.
Ah, yeah.
And there's two people that you play with that I feel is the epitome of listening and responding creatively to what you hear with good manners. And that's with two guitarists. You know who I'm talking about, Frizzell and Sko, you know.
Yeah.
You probably feel the same way, right?
Well, for sure, man. We've both Bill and John and I met in the early 70s.